Hello and welcome to the How Not to Screw Up Your Kids podcast, the bucket emptying episodes. I'm your host, Dr. Mary Han, psychologist and parenting expert. So, pour yourself a cuppa, find a comfy seat and enjoy the conversation. Today's bucket emptying episode comes to you in the week that is the third anniversary of the How Not to Screw Up Your Kids podcast. So I just want to pause there for a minute. The podcast has been going for 3 years. And whilst I would have loved to have thought that that would still be the case when I started the podcast, I had no idea that this is what was going to happen and that new incredible people would be downloading, and not only downloading one episode a week, but now downloading 2 episodes, the short form bucket emptying 10 minutes and the longer form the longer form on a Monday. So thank you so much. It does not go unappreciated by me. As I say, I was looking at the stats. We're downloaded in 89 countries. That's just little me in my Hampshire home making these recordings, and my incredible team then producing it, editing it and getting it out to you. And 89 countries in the world are listening. So thank you so much. With that in mind, could I please make 2 requests from you? One is in the show notes. We have got an updated questionnaire, which I would be ever so grateful if you could complete it. It really helps us understand, helps me understand and my team understand the types of episodes that you want more of. And it helps me understand a bit more about the profile of my listeners. So what age you are, what age your children are, because it helps me create, write, produce better, more impactful podcast episodes. So the link for that questionnaire, it will literally take you 5 minutes, is in the show notes. So go and check that one out. And then the second request is, as ever, other people find this podcast based on the referrals that you make to your friends when you share the episode, because you understand that they might be going through a similar challenge, but also by the reviews and the ratings that you put on the podcast. So if you could just simply spare a couple of minutes afterwards, or pause now and go and do that, rate the podcast and also write a little review, that would be amazing. And if you haven't yet, then do follow the podcast, because by following the podcast, all that means is that with each episode, as they become released, they automatically go into your podcast library, ready for you to listen when you're ready. So let's move on to the episode. Now, this is something for you as parents, and it's particularly for you as parents that may well be struggling with a particular aspect of your child's behaviour, mindset, language, whatever it is. There is an aspect of your child that is slightly either triggering you or causing you a lot of challenges. And this particular tip that I'm going to share with you is one we often talk about: how can we change our children's mindset so that they can be a little bit broader in their perspective and push themselves out of their comfort zone and try new things. And that's all about expanding their mindset. It's all about giving them these real opportunities, really. We want them to look at things, look at the world and through a different lens. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is how can you as parents adopt a similar view when we are in that process of trying to help and to shift our children in the way that they are about something. So let's say you've got a child at the moment who's giving you a lot of back chat. Maybe you've got a teen who's just not revising. Maybe you've got a child who's constantly on devices. Maybe you've got one that's constantly pushing boundaries or is explosive in terms of managing their emotions. So you're dealing with a particular challenge. Now, when we are in the thick of it as parents, we're in the wars, aren't we? But we're right in the middle of that deep, dark forest, tall trees. It's this where the phrase comes from. You can't see the wood for the trees, because we're so entrenched in the challenge that we're dealing with our children, is that we find it really difficult to see beyond that. And so what tends to happen to our mindset is we get focused in on what is going on with our child, and we pick up all of the things that our children are doing that, reinforces the challenge that we're having. So I often talk about this idea about a confirmation bias. So it's this idea of when you have something in your mind, in your mindset. So this could be a child who just, nobody likes me, or I'm not confident enough, or what if this awful thing happens? Yeah. So that's a belief system. And what tends to happen when we've got that belief system is you actively look in your environment, and things which support that belief system you tend to pick up on. You notice those. That's why it's called a confirmation bias. It's like, oh, look, I've just seen that. And that's exactly what I've been talking about. That's the thing that makes me nervous. That's what the bad thing that could happen, or whatever that might be. The same applies to us as parents. When we're caught in that back chat, in that managing tech, in the child that won't go to sleep, or the child who's super anxious or is pushing all boundaries, is we get into that confirmation bias because we notice all aspects of their behaviour that confirm our theory that they're being problematic. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not being problematic, and we've got to address that issue. Of course we need to. But the difference here is that if we want to shift behaviour, of course we have to work on changing that behaviour, but we also need to be intentional as parents that we know that we're really tuning in to that pattern of behaviour. So we're noticing all of that, but what we also have are blinkers to all of the good stuff, because there is good stuff there. There really is. Even if that good stuff is only like they're beginning to do that good stuff, there's moments, but they don't necessarily always follow through. So my top tip in this bucket emptying episode is to remind you to be aware that we've got that confirmation bias ourselves when we're dealing with a particular challenge that we're trying to work through with our children, because things don't change overnight. We have to work on it. That's the first aspect of it. And then it is being intentional about, I am going to notice, I am going to actively look for, and I'm going to shift my mindset focus towards noticing the good bits. Those, even if they are small moments. So if you've got a child, maybe you're helping them manage those big emotions. And at the moment they go from 0 to explosion, and literally, either they're pushing or kicking or throwing, or they're being physical with their sibling or with you. When we're in the midst of that, it can be really difficult to notice those small moments when they've just tried to hold it together. Now, they may not have done in the end. They may still go to 60, but instead of doing it in a nanosecond, you've noticed that temporary pause before they then do it. And that's what I would like you to really focus in on, because when we take those blinkers off, so we're not just looking at the behaviour that confirms the challenge that we're dealing with, it allows us to have those moments when we can praise our children descriptively. We can praise those moments where they've really tried. And that feeds into so much of the narrative that I speak about, this idea of growth mindset. The brain is a muscle like every other part. The more we exercise it, the stronger it becomes. So we're exercising our muscle to notice the good stuff. So and it reinforces to our children, because we're focusing in on the process, those moments when they have really tried. And because we've focused in on that, we're reinforcing this process for them, that their behaviour can change. It's just a matter of effort. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of continual practice. So that's why it works so well in terms of that promoting that growth mindset. And the second aspect, when we look at descriptive praise, is it really is super clear to our children the pattern of behaviour that we want to see more of. So if you've missed the episode previously on descriptive praise, let me just give you a little bit of information because it's really relevant here. So descriptive praise is praise that is given that is super, super clear, that describes the behaviour that you have seen, that you are impressed with, and is, you talk about it in that descriptive way, very much like the television program Catchphrase. Say what you see. Tell them what it is that you have seen in their behaviour that you like, that you're pleased with, because what that does is, A, it gives them praise. And who doesn't love praise? Children love praise. But it's the kind of praise that they can then use to inform them of the pattern of behaviour that you want to see more of. And because it's super clear what it is that you're praising, we don't get any of this, well, of course you're going to say that because you're my parents, which typically happens when we do the big, grand superlatives of, you're amazing, that's incredible, and of course you can do anything, which tends to fall on deaf ears with all age children, not just our teens that we think are going to be pushing back. So descriptive praise is really helpful. And it's really say what you see. I am so impressed that I could see for that moment, you were desperately trying not to get angry and to say unkind things. And you really were trying. And I'm so impressed that you had that moment where you were really trying to be on top of your big feelings and make better choices. So again, we've said what we've seen that we have been impressed with. And what that does is it feeds into this, the child's thinking, I've just been praised, that's amazing. And because you've been super clear what it is that you like, the child is much more likely to show more of that because you've been super explicit about what's been helpful. So I hope that that helps you. I know it is always incredibly challenging when we're working through a particular process with our children and they're going through a challenge and we're trying to change that behavior. But if we can just change our mindset, if we can just change the lens with which we look through, then it means that the transition and the change can happen much more quickly. So if you have enjoyed this podcast episode, as ever, I would be eternally grateful if you could rate, follow, and review this podcast so that others can find us and we can spread the love. So until next time.